In the quiet town of Greenfield, the shocking murder of Jack Thompson rocks the community. What seems like a tragic death soon reveals a dark love triangle between Jack, his ex-wife Leah, and her new lover Derek, a man with a violent past. As Detective Sarah Lawson unravels the secrets behind Jack's murder, she uncovers a web of jealousy, betrayal, and vengeance. Who killed Jack? Was it Leah, driven by fear and desperation, or Derek, consumed by jealousy? With each new revelation, the line between victim and perpetrator blurs, leading to a climax that no one saw coming. The discovery of Jack Thompson's death in his small house on the outskirts of Greenfield rocked the sleepy hamlet to its foundations. A popular middle-aged guy, Jack was well known for his kindness and collected manner. He and his wife, Leah, had recently gone through a difficult divorce. Jack had been clearly strained since the divorce, which had only been formalized months before, but nobody could have predicted the awful conclusion he would meet. Jack's longtime partner and high school sweetheart, Leah Thompson, had swiftly moved on following their breakup. Derek Stone was a charming man with a dark past who gave her comfort. Leah had never felt more exhilarated and dangerous in her life than she did when she met Derek, a violently convicted ex-convict with a past of his own. A complex web of deceit, treachery, and retaliation was revealed during the intense inquiry that followed the finding of Jack's lifeless corpse under dubious circumstances. The inquiry revolved around the love triangle between Jack, Leah, and Derek, uncovering sinister motives and dark secrets beneath the surface. Led by Detective Sarah Lawson, the local police force in Greenfield was entrusted with sorting through the intricate relationships and determining the cause of Jack's sudden death. As the investigation went on, it became evident that this was a carefully thought-out act of retaliation rather than just a straightforward case of a crime of passion. The town would see unexpected turns and startling disclosures in the weeks that followed as the true nature of Jack, Leah, and Derek's connections emerged. Everyone was left wondering who could be trusted and who was keeping the darkest secrets when the distinction between victim and offender became hazy. The union of Jack and Leah Thompson had previously been the picture of stability and affection. They became engaged in high school, and as time went on, their love seemed to grow stronger till marriage. Jack had always been the pillar of their relationship, a good-hearted man with a reliable career as a school teacher. Leah, a nurse at the neighborhood hospital, balanced his resoluteness with her tenderness and empathy. But as time went on, their relationship's spark started to wane. Their marriage was strained by the demands of everyday life, and they're unable to procreate. Layla began to look for comfort outside of their relationship as her need for novelty and change increased. In the end, her search for anything novel brought her to Derek Stone. Derek Stone has a tumultuous history. After being incarcerated for multiple years due to assault and armed robbery, he made a commitment to change his ways when he was released. Layla was soon seduced by his rugged good looks and charm, which gave her the excitement and unpredictable she so desperately needed. The security she had enjoyed with Jack stood in stark contrast to Derek's presence in her life. Layla's marriage to Jack eventually failed as a result of the passionate and deep affair she had with Derek. Both parties hurled allegations and recriminations during the acrimonious divorce. Jack was inconsolable, not understanding how the person he had loved for so long could have betrayed him in this way. Conversely, Layla felt free and eager to begin a new chapter in her relationship with Derek. Jack tried to move on, but he had a hard time letting go of the past. He was still deeply in love with Layla, and the idea of her dating someone else broke his heart. His friends and co-workers saw the shift in him, his once upbeat disposition giving way to a subdued melancholy. Jack's hopelessness increased as he encountered resistance to his attempts to revive his romance with Layla. Derek, meantime, had his own grievances. His aggressive impulses started to rise again as he felt resentment towards Jack for the apparent hold he still had over Layla. Derek's possessiveness and jealousy increased, which resulted in frequent conflicts with Layla. Leah stayed faithful to Derek in spite of this, believing their love was worth the chaos. The tragic events that were about to transpire were set in motion by the growing tension that developed between Jack, Layla, and Derek as the months went by. Enormous with hatred and envy, the love triangle would soon blow apart in a way that would stun the whole town of Greenfield and leave destruction in its wake. Jack's elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, heard his death scream as she saw his lifeless body spread out on the living room floor, shattering the pristine fall morning. Observing that Jack's mail had accumulated over the last few days, she had gone over to see how he was doing. Her worries soon gave way to terror upon discovering the gory scene. Detective Sarah Lawson and her colleagues arrived at the site in a matter of minutes after the local police were promptly alerted. They were met with a scene that was both unsettling and perplexing. Jack's face was twisted into a painful grimace as his body lay in a pool of blood. There were broken glass pieces all over the floor and overturned furniture, the look of a violent conflict. Mrs. Henderson was interviewed by Detective Lawson as the forensic team got to work. The elderly woman described her discoveries and her interactions with Jack in the final days before his death, clearly distressed. A few nights prior, she had recounted hearing high voices coming from Jack's house, but she had written it off as simply another fight between Jack and Lila. Derek and Lila were taken in for interrogation without delay. Lila looked upset, her tears hot in her eyes. Derek, meanwhile, had an unreadable countenance and was stoic. Upon observing the sharp disparity between the two, Detective Lawson had a gut feeling that there was more to their tale than what first appeared. Leah described her most recent conversation with Jack. She said that she had not seen him in a number of days and that they had discussed completing the sale of their previous house during their last chat. Lee's account was confirmed by Derek, who said they had spent the night before Jack died at his flat, which was located miles distant from the scene of the crime. Detective Lawson couldn't get rid of the uneasy sensation despite their denials. She started by looking into Derek's past and gave the order for a comprehensive search of his flat. The forensic analysis's preliminary findings suggested that there had been a battle, and Jack had fought back against his attacker. His skull showed evidence of blunt force trauma, indicating that he had been struck by a heavy item several times. A bloody baseball bat found in Jack's garage added to the investigation's complexity. Jack's fingerprints were present on the bat, but there were additional smudges that indicated it had been handled by someone else. In the hopes that the bat would yield a vital clue, Detective Lawson sent it to the lab for additional examination. Greenfield residents were speculating furiously. Theories varied from a crime of passion to an attempted robbery. Through interviews with friends and co-workers, Jack's portrait emerged as one of a man tormented but not without foes. The investigation revolved around Leah and Derek's turbulent relationship, because many people suspected that their involvement went beyond a simple affair. Detective Lawson was aware that putting the pieces of the many people's lives together would be necessary to piece together the reality behind Jack's death. She was resolved to learn every secret, no matter how sinister or unsettling, about the complicated love triangle involving Jack, Leah, and Derek. Detective Sarah Lawson led the charge when the murder inquiry into Jack Thompson's death got underway. Making a chronology of the incidents leading up to Jack's passing was her first move. In order to piece together Jack, Leah, and Derek's last known movements, she and her team spoke with acquaintances, neighbors, and family. The neighbors were a great source of knowledge. In the final days before Jack passed away, a few people had heard loud arguments emanating from his home. Mr. Parker, a neighbor, claimed to have seen a dark person prowling Jack's land late at night, though he was unable to give a precise description. Mrs. Green, another neighbor, reported that the day before Jack's death was discovered, Leah hurriedly left his residence. Detective Lawson spoke with Lee's hospital co-workers, who acknowledged that while she was a committed nurse, in recent months she had become more irritated and inattentive. Susan, a co-worker, remembered Leah opening up to her about the strain of her divorce and her tumultuous relationship with Derek. Susan said that Leah had hinted at Derek's aggressive tendencies on multiple occasions and voiced fear for her safety. An examination of Derek's past was also conducted. Derek had a violent past and had been in and out of jail for a number of crimes, including assault and armed robbery, Detective Lawson found. Her interviews with several of Derek's previous associates revealed a man with a deep-seated craving for control and a propensity for explosive outbursts. Mike, a former colleague, stated that Derek had a history of discussing taking legal action against anyone who had harmed him. Derek had a dark past, but his alibi for the night Jack was killed looked credible. Nevertheless, there was growing evidence that Detective Lawson had a reason for having Jack removed from the picture, and he was unable to ignore it. Her suspicions were heightened when she discovered Jack's blood on Derek's shoes during the apartment search. Red flags were raised by Lee's conflicting statements as well. She had stated in her first interview that she hadn't seen Jack in days. Mrs. Green's story, on the other hand, put Leah at Jack's residence the day before he passed away, refuting this. When this disparity was brought up, Leah became combative, claiming that she had just gone to pick up a few personal items and had left after a little disagreement. Detective Lawson discovered texts between Leah and Derek as the inquiry went on, indicating that they had talked about meeting Jack to confront him about his persistent meddling in their relationship. The messages alluded to a mounting sense of annoyance with Jack and a wish to cease the ongoing argument. The evidence was growing, but the case was far from clear-cut. Detective Lawson was aware that she would require additional hard evidence to present a strong case against Derek and Leah. In an attempt to discover forensic proof that would connect them to Jack's murder, she commanded a comprehensive examination of the crime scene. Greenfield residents carefully followed the investigation's progress. Reporters flocked to the sleepy community to cover the dramatic story, which had already sparked a media frenzy. Despite the tremendous pressure placed on Detective Lawson and her team, she never wavered in her resolve to find the truth and hold Jack Thompson accountable. Suspicion about Leah and Derek intensified as the investigation into Jack Thompson's murder progressed. Examining every detail, Detective Lawson and her team pieced together a puzzle that appeared to link Derek and Leah to Jack's demise. Leah started acting in a more unpredictable way. In the interviews that followed, her initial sadness gave way to a combative and aggressive demeanor. She gave contradictory explanations when asked about her attendance at Jack's place, which complicated matters even more. Her frequent absences from work and the whispery talks she had on her phone with her coworkers at the hospital fueled rumors that she was involved in something terrible. Derek's questionable actions also caught Detective Lawson's attention. It was impossible to ignore the contradictions, notwithstanding his alibi. Although Derek had stated that he was in his apartment the night of the murder, security footage from a nearby gas station revealed that he was really driving at that time. Even though the video was blurry, there was enough evidence to support additional research. An important lead came when Jack's blood was found on Derek's sneakers. Derek was at the scene of the crime when forensic examination revealed that the blood matched Jack's. Derek lost his cool when this evidence was presented to him. Detective Lawson's suspicions were raised by his increasingly erratic behavior, even though he denied any involvement and claimed he had been set up. Following Jack's murder, Leah and Derek had a number of angry conversations, as evidenced by her phone records. The texts alluded to a scheme to face Jack and cease the unrelenting chaos he was bringing into their lives. Derek was pressing Leah to move quickly as the texts became more confrontational in tone. Lee's enigmatic response to Derek's text the night before the murder suggested that she agreed, but one particular message stuck out. "It's time we take care of this once and for all." The communications provide a terrifying window into the growing hostility between the three people. Financial records found by Detective Lawson's squad also showed that Leah had just taken out a sizable life insurance policy on Jack. Worth a substantial sum, the policy designated Leah as its only recipient. There were questions raised by the policy's timing, which suggested that Jack's murder may have had a financial motivation. Detective Lawson realized she needed a confession to strengthen the case as the evidence grew. Seeing gaps in Lee's story, she chose to put some pressure on her. Finally, during a heated interrogation, Leah broke down. She acknowledged going to Jack's residence the day before he passed away, but she maintained that she had gone before anything significant occurred. She said that Derek was driving her to sever all connections with Jack since he was getting more and more insane. Derek's previous companions were questioned by Detective Lawson once more, this time with an emphasis on his violent inclinations and possible motivation. Mike, the ex-colleague who had brought up Derek's desire for retribution, disclosed that Derek had frequently expressed his desire to destroy anyone who jeopardized his connection with Leah. Derek was the target of growing evidence, but the investigation was at a crossroads. For Detective Lawson to connect Derek directly to the crime, he needed hard evidence. In an attempt to find the last piece of the puzzle that would bring Jack Thompson to justice, she gave the go-ahead for a thorough search of Derek's residence. Investigator Sarah Lawson dug further into Derek Stone's past as the inquiry into Jack Thompson's murder went on. The more she learned, the more obvious it was that Derek was a violent man with a penchant for retaliation. Derek's criminal history included a number of infractions from his adolescent years. He had engaged in assaults, small-time thefts, and gang activity. But the most significant conviction he had was for armed robbery, which had sent him to jail for a number of years. Derek's violent inclinations were further highlighted by the numerous altercations he had with other prisoners while he was incarcerated. In an attempt to understand Derek's actions and motivations, Detective Lawson spoke with a few of his previous associates. Mike, the colleague who had earlier alluded to Derek's vindictive disposition, gave a terrifying story of Derek's incarceration. Mike claimed that Derek had a reputation for being merciless and cruel, frequently going after those who mistreated him or presented a danger. Steve, a former colleague, related a particularly unsettling event in which Derek got into a physical fight with another prisoner after the latter had made offensive remarks to him. The prisoner had sustained serious injuries from the struggle, and Derek had expressed no regret. According to Steve, Derek was a man who thrived on power and control, qualities that had only grown stronger while he was incarcerated. In addition, Detective Lawson learned that Derek had a track record of problematic relationships. Lisa, his ex-girlfriend, opened up about the traumatic moments they had. At first, Lisa said Derek was friendly and considerate, but that soon changed. He was aggressive and possessive, cutting her off from friends and relatives. Even after she was able to leave the relationship, she couldn't shake her fear of Derek's violent tendencies. Lisa's story shed more light on Derek's personality. She said Derek had expressed in the past that he wanted to exact revenge on anyone who had offended him. He had long-standing resentments and would do whatever it took to make amends. Detective Lawson saw that Derek's bitterness toward Jack and his friendship with Leah were a great fit for this pattern. Equipped with this fresh data, Detective Lawson stepped up her search for hard proof connecting Derek to Jack's slaying. In an attempt to find anything that would link Derek to the crime scene, she gave the go-ahead for a thorough search of his residence. A blood-stained garment concealed at the back of Derek's closet and a set of keys matching the locks on Jack's house were among the other possible pieces of evidence that were found during the search. Derek was directly connected to the crime when forensic examination revealed that the blood on the garment matched Jack's. Although this finding represented a major advancement, Detective Lawson was aware that it would not be sufficient to result in a conviction on its own. She required more proof, or at least a confession, to make her case. In an attempt to get a response, Detective Lawson made the decision to provide Derek with the fresh information. Derek lost his cool throughout the interrogation. Although he angrily denied being involved, his increasingly erratic behavior gave rise to suspicions. When Leah was shown the evidence against Derek, she clearly looked scared. Leah had been hauled in for interrogation once more. Leah started to put distance between herself and Derek in an attempt to rescue herself. She said that she had been too terrified to leave him because he had manipulated her. Despite being self-serving, Lee's remarks shed more light on how unstable and poisonous their relationship was. Although Detective Lawson was confident she was getting close to discovering the truth, she still needed one more push to solve the case. New evidence and unexpected findings further complicated the case as the investigation approached its pivotal point. Investigative team member Sarah Lawson was committed to unraveling the conspiracy of lies surrounding Jack Thompson's death. Unexpectedly, one of the biggest discoveries came from there. Tony, a previous prisoner who had been in Derek's cell, came forward with important information. Tony disclosed that Derek had told him about his strategy for getting rid of Jack. Tony claimed that Derek had boasted about his plan to permanently solve the issue and vented his annoyance at Jack's continuing influence in Lee's life. Tony's testimony strengthened the idea that Derek planned the murder. He gave precise information that matched the evidence discovered at the location of the crime, down to the murder weapon's usage, a baseball bat. Tony's testimony changed everything because it gave Detective Lawson the support he needed to develop a strong case against Derek. But when Lee's secret was revealed, the investigation took an unexpected turn. The squad led by Detective Lawson unearthed several concealed bank accounts bearing Lee's name, each holding substantial quantities of cash that she had been embezzling for the last few years. This information made people wonder about Lee's actual motivations and whether or not she was involved in the murder. Leah had been preparing to move out from Derek and begin a new life, according to her financial records. A hidden saver, she had been waiting for the perfect opportunity to flee. With this additional knowledge, Lee's story took a different turn, raising the possibility that she had her own motivations for wanting Jack to step aside. Leah was challenged by Detective Lawson with the proof of the concealed money accounts. Leah sobbed and acknowledged that she had been stuck in an aggressive and poisonous relationship with Derek. She acknowledged that she had been planning to flee out of fear for her life, but she steadfastly maintained that she was not involved in Jack's murder. Leah said that Derek had acted on his own, motivated by his own enmity and jealousy. Another twist surfaced as the investigation progressed. It was found that a third party, who was previously unknown to the investigators, had communicated with Derek and Leah. This man, Ryan, had previously worked with Derek during his illegal career. Ryan had recently gotten out of jail and was back in contact with Derek. In an attempt to ascertain Ryan's involvement in the case, Detective Lawson brought him in for questioning. Ryan acknowledged having multiple meetings with Derek and Leah, but he denied having anything to do with the murder. But his answers were contradictory, and his tense manner gave the impression that he was concealing something. When Ryan's prints were discovered on the baseball bat that was used to kill Jack, the course of the investigation was drastically altered. After being questioned nonstop, Ryan eventually broke. He admitted that Derek had asked for his assistance in killing Jack in exchange for a portion of the life insurance that Leah had purchased for him. Ryan disclosed that Derek had orchestrated every aspect, ranging from the first altercation to the destruction of the proof. Ryan's confession, which linked him and Derek to the murder, was the final piece in the puzzle. Though Lee's exact role was still unknown, the evidence seemed to point to her having played a pawn in Derek's devious scheme. Even though Detective Lawson was aware that the case was not simple, she remained committed to holding the guilty parties accountable. Detective Sarah Lawson readied herself for the last confrontation after obtaining Ryan's confession. She prepared herself for a heated and maybe dangerous encounter because she knew Derek Stone would not go down without a fight. A concerted attempt was organized by Detective Lawson and her squad to apprehend Derek. They made the decision to go up to him at his flat, where he and Leah had been staying. The element of surprise was essential because they expected Derek to try to run away or respond violently. The team performed the operation with great speed and efficiency on the day. With excitement in her heart, Detective Lawson knocked on Derek's door. Derek responded with a look that was equal parts surprise and defiance. Derek was informed by Detective Lawson that he was being held for the murder of Jack Thompson, along with the evidence and Ryan's confession. Derek responded with lightning speed. He yelled threats and accusations as he lunged towards Detective Lawson. Derek delivered a few more blows before the officers swiftly brought him down. His defiance did little but solidify the perception of him as a violent and unstable person, thereby ensuring his doom. Leah was hauled in for more interrogation while Derek was being taken into custody. She appeared to be truly afraid of Derek after learning of Ryan's participation, which had rattled her. Leah stated that she had never meant for Jack to suffer any damage and that she had been ignorant of the full scope of Derek's plot. Leah may have claimed otherwise, but the evidence seemed to indicate that she knew something about Derek's plans. In an attempt to uncover the last few facts of the case, Detective Lawson questioned her for more information. Leah finally confessed, under duress, that she had known Derek was up to something, but she had been too scared to ask him. The decision of Derek to make a deal after realizing the truth about his circumstances marked the culmination of the investigation. He consented to give a complete confession and link Leah to the murder plot in exchange for a lighter sentence. Derek's confession, which described how he had planned Jack's death with cold, calculated precision was horrifying. Derek disclosed that he had tricked Leah into purchasing Jack's life insurance by assuring her that she wouldn't have to worry about money in the future. Then, leveraging the desperation and loyalty of his old associate, he had enlisted Ryan's assistance to complete the crime. Derek acknowledged that he couldn't stand Jack's continuous presence in Lee's life and that his actions had been motivated by envy and a need for control. When Leah heard Derek's confession, she became quite emotional. She acknowledged her part in the scheme, but she insisted that she had never meant for Jack to die. Her need for independence and her dread of Derek had distorted her judgment, sending her down a tragic and dark path. The case against Derek and Leah was strong, and they were both in detention. The trial proceeded quickly, and Derek was given a life sentence for his part as the murder's mastermind. Despite her involvement, Lee's sentence was lenient because of her cooperation and the proof of her violent relationship with Derek. Despite being permanently altered by the events, the town of Greenfield experienced a resurgence of cohesion and fortitude. Jack Thompson's legacy endured, serving as a constant reminder of both the frailty of life and the significance of pursuing justice for people who are no longer able to speak for themselves.